Okay, so today we have Tarina Bell with us. Tarina provides PR and publicity services to select authors on a boutique level. She's successfully placed clients and their titles with The Today Show, PBS, Book Riot, Good Housekeeping, and other premier national outlets. Tarina achieves client success by uniting all public relations actions with her clients' goals. Karina, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you spending your time with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate Marla and Maureen and the library and all of y'all being here. So, who's ready to learn?
Yes, yes,
All right, who's ready to have a little fun?
yes.
So, this is not one of those things where I'm going to talk for a whole hour and you're going to get really, really bored and snooze off and then hold questions for the end. I strongly believe with learning that if you don't learn something, if I do not have something additional in your noggin by the end of this hour, then it's two people's fault. It's mine and it's yours. It's mine for not giving you new information that is applicable to what you are doing and that is put across in a manner in which you can learn from it. But it's yours for not saying, hey, Tarina, this isn't new or applicable. Could you please go back and explain that? Or actually, our group knows this already. We can skip that. So, with that in mind, interrupt me. I'll probably interrupt you. It's okay. I know that's a little hard over Zoom, but feel free to unmute and speak up. If you put a question into the chat, I will not see it. If you put a question into the Q&A for our folks who are remote, I won't see that either because I'm paying attention to you and I'm not able to do that if I'm looking at 45 million different sources and you've got somebody new who wants in the room. I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw that.
I'm adding her. Yeah,
Okay.
we're all good.
All right,
Yeah.
wonderful. So, Helen, if you are with us, you have not missed a thing. I have just introduced myself. I am Tarina. Feel free to interrupt me. All right. So, with all of that in mind, who's ready to chat about PR?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome sauce. So, let's start with why I'm here. Why are you listening to me talk about this instead of somebody else? Why am I even doing this instead? Well, I'm a writer and I'm a publicist. I was a writer first. Finished my first short story when I was 5, and it was still in my grandma's refrigerator when she died. All right. Yeah,
Oh.
she's a really sweet lady. It was called The Sad and Happy Shoe, and the shoe was very happy because it was walking along. It was a very bright day, but then it steps on an ant hill and realizes that it killed all the ants, and it was very sad. So I don't know. They thought I was a morbid child, but basically I just set out for a future of writing crime.
Yes.
I like shooting my characters in the head. But it is also very cold where I am right now. I'm in New York. The accent is Kentucky, but our feels like this morning when I woke up was -14. So I am
Whoa.
envying you with your, what is it, 75 there in Austin?
Yeah.
Supposed to get up
Yeah.
to 82.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dear Lord, sweet Jesus, I pray.
Right.
So,
We have a medium.
the way that I became a publicist, I was head of global PR for a big, well, they're now formerly NASDAQ traded because they delisted. But I was head of global PR for a NASDAQ traded, once NASDAQ traded company in Midtown Manhattan. And then the pandemic came. And I know that it hit every corner of the world in a very different way. But one of the very first ways that hit us here in New York City was pretty much everybody lost their job, including me. And so the good news is that meant that I was able to take time and dedicate it back to my writing. Would have made my grandmother very happy. And I was able to finish my first collection. I published it with a small press named Whiskey Tit that is in Brooklyn and Vermont. And because I wasn't working, I could funnel pretty much all of my efforts into promoting it and trying to make the publication of that as successful as it could be. And so I didn't do, because it was my first title, I didn't do like the checklist. And I'm sure that some of y'all have been to enough online presentations, conferences, read Writer's Digest magazines to kind of know what I'm talking about. You got to be on social media. You got to be on BookBub. You need a website. Have your book on the back of your business card, which if I had one on my desk, I'd show you. It's there. but I didn't know what the checklist was, so I didn't follow it. I just took what I had done for that company and I used the same skills and just some of that West Kentucky, grown up on a farm common sense and did everything that I knew to do. And I wound up making my royalties back during pre orders. And
Wow.
then it wound up becoming the fourth best selling. Now somebody's beat me, but at the time it wound up being the fourth best selling title that the publisher had had. Now I'm not Stephen King, they're a small press. So that gives you some idea of, we're going to hopefully talk later about goals, actionable steps to meet those goals, and then how we measure the success. But when I was done, it was very much a success that I deemed, that the publisher deemed. She said, "You know what, Trina?" She said, "I know you've been having a hard time finding a job. Everybody up here was." And she said, "Have you ever thought about doing this full time?" And she said, "You're actually better than the people we normally pay." And my first thought was, "You could have paid me?" Like, you could have paid another person to do this, but I did start doing a couple of titles for them, started working with other people, and I was like, this actually is a new career that was born. So that's how I wound up being a book publicist, was that I did it for myself. But I didn't follow, and I still don't follow the checklist. For all I care, they can put their checklist in the trash. And we'll get to that a little bit later. I would stop right now and ask for questions, but one, I told you to interrupt me, and two, I'm not so interesting or egotistical to take questions on me. So if it's all right, we're going to, although, do you have any questions about me? No, we're going to move on to, what's a PR rep do anyway? Right? Like, they said that that's what I am. But the reason why this is important is because I want us to align expectations of what we are and are not going to talk about today. Nothing's worse than driving all the way to the library, or putting your halfway good clothes on and cleaning up the room behind you so you can zoom in, and then not learning anything or not getting your main concern asked, or the person just going so vilely off topic that you felt like you just wasted an hour and a half of your life, right? So I'm just going to
Right.
say up front, I'm going to explain what a PR rep slash publicist does so that we kind of know going in what we're going to talk about. So again, like, if we're going to be talking about what our goals are and how do we map to goals and what is success, if we know what our goal is as far as what we want to learn and what actionably we're actually going to talk about, we can better align that, and then there's more success, or everybody walks away happier. So does that make sense? I know sometimes I can also kind of talk fast. We doing good?
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. As I say, the faces I can see, I'm seeing some nods and that sort of thing. So yeehaw. All right.
Mhm.
So I look at marketing like a grocery store. Okay. All right. So if we look at these concentric circles, like subsets of things, think about marketing as being the whole supermarket. All right. Think about public relations is going to be your produce. And then publicity is like tomatoes. Okay. So, hi, Leah. You have not missed a whole lot. We are just, oh, Leah's wanting in still. Sorry. Okay. Hi, Leah. You have not missed a whole lot. I am Tarina. We're glad that you've joined us. So, we're talking about basically, like, marketing is anything that helps get your book in front of the market. Now, that's a little different from like go to market strategy of like getting the book printed and that kind of thing. But marketing is going to include your cover, okay? It's going to include like your brand, like who am I as an author? And that's an entirely different presentation. But I advise everybody to think of a bunch of adjectives that describe who you are, and then a bunch of adjectives that describe what your writing is. The adjectives that are in common is your brand, right? Because then if you're tired, if your work is not as great as it normally is, whatever, you're always those things. But defining your brand, like, is marketing. Like, what colors are you going to use on your website, or on your business card? The fact that you're even going to have business cards versus, there's a listserv that Noreen and I were talking about earlier, and some man was on there saying not to do business cards instead, but to give out bookmarks. I think that's bad advice, but I'm not a marketer, right? That's not my main area. Like, that's over in potato chip land, and I'm in the produce, Okay. So digging back down into that, marketing is anything that gets your book in front of the market. Okay. Public relations is anything where you are relating with the public back and forth. So, looking at social media, where you're relating back and forth, like if we think about a Facebook ad and how that's different from posting, hey, I've got a new book coming out on Facebook. Like if you post, I've got a new book coming out, somebody's going to go, oh, hey, that's great. And then you're going to like their comment or you're going to say thank you. So there is some relating back and forth. If you get like a Facebook ad, and the same goes for Google ads, Amazon ads, that kind of thing, like your Amazon keywords, that's just more shouting at them. There's not, or throwing it out there to them, there's not a relationship back and forth. So I am going to stop to ask if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, good. Okay. So anything like it's all in the name. You know, marketing gets it in front of the market, public relations is the relating back and forth, and then publicity focuses very, very much on the result of what they think of you or what they think of your book as a result of the public relations. And so that's like where you get into like your talk shows. No, I cannot get you on Oprah. I actually had an elderly client ask me to get her on Oprah 2 weeks ago. Oprah doesn't have a show anymore. It's not going to happen. Okay. I also could not get her a review in Family Circle. She's a very sweet lady. Family Circle has closed. Okay. But if I could, sorry, I shouldn't make fun of my clients. And you're recording too. This is hard. But again, we have to align our expectations. Okay. Somebody stop me. Good Lord. So, but what the public thinks of you is the publicity part. So like reviews kind of affect what people think because you're like, this book is good. And then somebody reading it is predisposed to also think that it is good. You know, or seeing you on let's say the Today Show, right? So there's some back and forth, you know, with I think Hoda is filling in for Miss Guthrie, which that is a horrible situation that we will not segue into. Probably should have warned y'all I have attention deficit. Let's get back on topic. Okay, like diagnosed. I'm not just saying that. So let me pause real quick because I said interrupt me, but I also know that for those of you who are as polite as my mother, that's really hard. How are we doing with that? Basically, I am going to be able to talk to you about anything that has to do with that relationship with the public. If you ask me, do I need to redo my website? I can give you my opinion. Like I can be the head of the produce department and tell you, I think, you know, that baked Lays or barbecue flavor are the best, but I'm not over the potato chip department. That's not my expertise. So what do we think? Are we doing okay? Does this make sense? Do we see why it's even important or matters?
Yes.
I think we're good. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's talk for a minute then about why we want PR. Now that we know what it is, right? Let's get more into the actual meat of wait, can y'all see my tabs also?
No. Oh, no. I mean, we can, oh yeah, we can. Sorry.
Is it slightly embarrassing that I've been watching Lonesome Dove? Should I close that
No,
up?
I wouldn't have even noticed it. You're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I've really got to get better at that part, but I'm not a marketer, right? So the design element is not part of what I do. I'm more about the interaction between folks. So why do you want PR? Okay, and we'll get into everybody's individual reasons here in just a minute, but I think that it's important to think through why we want to do things. And going back to that checklist, what happens at the Big Five, and I do not mean this as like a burn toward them or anything like that. It is how they, over 100 years, have determined is the most expedient way to get a baseline in on every book. But you've got somebody 24, 26, probably went to Bates or Vassar or, somewhere like that, okay? And, or like Barnard or something like that. And she's almost always got dark hair, which kind of weirds me out. But but they give them a checklist, okay? And they go down and you send reviews to these people. Like one of them would have been Washington Post Book World until it got closed up this week. New York Times Book Review, and they kind of do the exact same thing for everybody. And they do that because a lot of the times these young ladies, it's their first job out of college, which is fine, and so they're kind of just doing what they're told on some level. But when I launched my book, I did not have Big Five resources. Now, I mean, if one of y'all are being published by Harper or Macmillan right now and they're throwing an S.A. Cosby sized budget at you and are going to put you on Times Square, I would like to fly to Texas and shake your hand. Right? But most of us do not have that. And it's also because there's a set number of hours, and so they've deemed that it's better to do these exact same things for everybody with those set number of hours than it is to spend half of the time brainstorming and then you lose what you're able to do for somebody, right? So there is a reason to it. But to me, I have to think about time. If you're doing it yourself and if you're paying somebody else, you have to think about money, right? And a dollar and a minute both only spend once. So if we're going to look at how to get an end goal, I've always been one of those people that it's like, well, think back. Like if you want to wear a dress and you want to make that dress yourself, well, I need thread and I need a pattern and I need fabric and I can get the fabric, and if you think back, right, if you're going to have success, if you're going to have the end goal from PR to validate either your time and or money, then you have to kind of know what you want from it. So, with that in mind, wait, why is this not playing? Sorry, it's much more dramatic when it plays. It's time to play the Family Feud! And yes, that is the original Richard Dawson's theme song, all right? So we're going to play the Family Feud. We're going to divide up with cozies on one side and noir on the other. All right, get ready to war off in a guessing game of the most common reasons. Like I polled 100 authors. I really didn't poll 100 authors. I just asked my clients, all right? So I polled 100 non-existent authors and asked, why do you want PR? Why are you even here? Why does it matter? Why do you want this? And these are the top 6 reasons on the board. So who would like to guess? And you may even just give your own reason, right? Why do you think, or why do you want PR? Why are you here? And I don't mean exeteriorly.
To find an agent?
To find an agent. So ding, 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 because again, some things are not my skill set. Reason number 3, to attract an agent. Now I've got for the next title, right? Although some authors have started just like last quarter coming to me because they want PR because they haven't published yet, because they're trying to get platforms so that they can publish the first title. But a lot of especially small press authors do want to get an agent's attention with the title that is out so that they can move on to that Big 5 level. All right, so yay. All right, who wants to guess what some of the other reasons are? There might accidentally already be on the board.
Sell more copies.
Sell more copies. Who wants to sell more copies? It's funny, I do this presentation with literary circles and they all look at me like money is evil, and then they secretly ask how to sell more copies.
Yeah.
Crime. We're like, no, we're like, I deserve, like my art has value. I deserve to make money for this. All right. So what might another reason be? You don't have to give the other one that's on the board. You
Be
can
read.
be read. Okay. So why are those broken out into 2 reasons? Are they the same thing, or should they be 2 reasons?
Not the same.
Did somebody say
I
that?
think they're different because selling more copies is about the bottom line, but really, like for me, I just want people to read the stuff I write, or why bother writing it?
Right.
And I'm not doing this because I think I'm going to make great money self-publishing, but I just want it to matter that I wrote this thing and it's not just like sitting on my laptop and that's that.
Yeah. Was that Marla who said that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, y'all are this big on my computer. Okay. So how might those things be different? And I don't want to get us too far ahead, but how might being read.
Fran, yeah, Fran. Go ahead, Fran.
I think that sell more copies to be read, to attract an agent. I think all of that really gets wrapped up with in the back and forth that you're talking about getting reviews, get people to say, this book is good, read it, because most people are very affected by others' opinions.
That's interesting.
Not one of
And
them, but yes, most people are.
sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Nothing good.
Nothing. Oh, okay. It's part of the reason why I keep my little slides at the side is because we wind up hopping around, like when people actually participate. But you'll see later, like you brought up reviews. I personally think that reviews. Wait, did I put them in sales? I think that reviews wind up in being read more than they wind up necessarily in sales. And we'll talk about that later, but I think it's because, and I'm talking right now about reviews like in the paper, or whatever, as opposed to an Amazon review, because there's a certain type of person who does sit down and read the New York Times book review, and they're the kind of person that if they go on and purchase the book, now it might sit in the to be read pile for a year and a half, but if they buy the book, a person who subscribes to New York Times Book Review is probably going to go through and read it. But one of the reasons why I do have being read and selling copies separated out is because those are two different things. Like somebody can buy it and then never read it in their life. They might give it away as a gift, or the library may purchase, like depending on the library size, there may be one book, like in a really, like the county where I grew up, they bought 2 copies, and one of those copies might be checked out 10 times. You see what I'm saying? And so being read and selling more copies, like when we go to looking at how to make sure things work, like if you're looking at the book scan, which is Amazon's way, actually more people than Amazon use it, but you can log into it through your author Amazon account. And see how many copies were sold through Amazon and Barnes and Noble and places like that. That's going to be a very different count than your number of readers. Like I've received books as gifts that wound up being giveaways because, like I'm not going to read Nicholas Sparks. And when I've had people give me Nicholas Sparks and a Secret Santa, that's like, your mother just teaches you to say thank you. Nothing against him, but anybody who knows me pretty well would never gift me Nicholas Sparks. And so it might get read further down the line, like, the person who takes it out of the little free library, but, I don't know. So anyway, what other reasons do you have for wanting PR? And let's see if they hit, one of these last ones.
So I don't have to do it myself as the author?
Okay, but why do you want it badly enough to even do it yourself?
Oh, well, just, to sell books and get people to read it. But
Okay,
yeah.
so to
Why
sell.
I would hire somebody else would be so that I didn't have to do it myself.
Like I used to be a reporter and they taught us to ask why 5 times to get down to what the answer really was.
Are you thinking of the engagement?
Okay, so why do you want engagement?
It's a form of validation and feedback and
So like when you want validation or feedback, what do you mean by that, or why do you want that?
well, it's just recognition that you've done something. And
Okay.
someone's actually seen it.
Yeah, and this isn't up here. I should probably change it because the validation for hard work is one that does come up, especially in sessions like this quite frequently. The reason I kept digging, I had a client once who was in Georgia. He just wanted his brother to be jealous.
Oh, how
No.
funny.
He was like, get my name anywhere you can that my brother will see it.
My God.
Pettiness is number
Right,
six.
right.
He was honest about it.
Well, but it took a while, and he's like, "Well, I just want the book out there. I just want visibility." And it's like, "Yeah, but why do you want, you know?" And so you can see how like his brother was not reading the New York Times Book Review. So, like, I actually the one client that I had his book, or he as an author, reported on by the Today Show. That guy was pissed. And you'd think, I don't know, like if I got y'all coverage from the Today Show, would you be happy or upset with me?
Very
Yeah,
happy.
yeah.
That's what I thought. Like I'd be pretty I'm sorry, pretty freaking happy.
Yeah.
You know, like I'd be exuberant with that.
Yeah.
But he had told me that his goal was to level up to an agent. And he wanted platform on his name. He published with a small press. He wanted platform on his name so big that when that agent Googled him, she was like, oh, of course I've got to represent his title. To me, you know, a story talking about you as a horror expert when you've got a literary horror story is achieving that. However, his goal was really and truly sales. And like I told you, like people in literary will lie when their goal is sales. They will lie and say it is everything else under the sun. I do not know what it is with that community and the toxicity of money to them. But turns out his goal was sales. Now you would also think that Today Show would generate sales, right?
Yeah.
It was an article on the website, not something on the program. And then the other difficulty with that is that the small press that published him is not in Ingram. All right, so who can tell us what Ingram is?
They sell to libraries.
Right, they sell out to libraries, and then also bookstores get their books from Ingram. Okay, a lot of them do. Now there's a competitor named Asterism that is up in Seattle that only does literary small presses. You know, there was Baker and Taylor, which recently closed. You know, so there are a few other spots where bookstores can also get direct from publisher. You know, but the thing about it is, like, if you see a book on the Today Show, be it the website or the main program, and you decide you're going to buy it, what are you going to do? Seriously, what would you do?
Yeah.
Huh?
Go to Amazon.
Go to either
Go to
Ingram or
Amazon, right? So if your book is not on Amazon because you're working with this small press that's like a little garage press that for artistic reasons you have to go to the press website and purchase it there. Is that the right target market to put information about your book? Because are these people going to know that this very small press has this obscure way of purchasing it? And, you know, I mean, they're just not. They're going to go to Amazon. They're going to go into a bookstore. And then when they can't find it, they're going to quit.
Right.
And so do you see how there's a disconnect between what he truly wanted, what his true goal was, and whether or not that was the right publicity action for him?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if
I have a guess for one of the last the last three categories.
Yeah.
When you were saying that, I had a thought. I bet there are people who their goal would be to be famous.
Oh.
That actually, yes. Name and lights. And that was so easy to achieve.
Famous. To be famous.
You don't even have to think. It's like pin the tail on the donkey, and you don't even have to hit the donkey. You just throw stuff at the wall with that one. That is like the easiest one to achieve because anything that they get, like you could say it's a really obscure podcast where two people, and they're like, oh, I'm so happy there's two more people, right? All right. Number 5 is to sell the film and translation rights. That's one that I get a lot. Okay. So I'm spending a little bit more time on this, but I always wind up spending more time on this because it is like if you look at the Today Show as an example and that disconnect, it is so important. We have to be honest with the world in order to write, but we have to be honest with ourselves to promote. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the other reason, it's not funny anymore. I really should change it. But I actually had a woman once who wanted a genius visa in order to stay in the United States. She was getting deported in 3 weeks. I cannot help with that.
Oh.
So, it
Yeah.
was a whole lot funnier when I first made these slides a year ago. I need to
Oh.
update it, and then I always forget that it's on there, and then
Yeah.
I pull it up, and I'm like, oh. But another one I hear a lot. Actually, I'm gonna quit. Are there any reasons that any of you have that we haven't talked about yet?
I think that covered it for us, I
I
think.
can think,
Yeah.
Sometimes, like with memoir, like there was a lady, she had a memoir about overcoming alcoholism, and she wanted to help other people not become an alcoholic. Like
Oh.
sometimes there's something altruistic with that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but the only reason in my book that's not a reason is because. All right. Like if it's, well, I just heard at a conference, I've got to be on BookBub. Or, well, I mean, I want reviews just because. Because
Mhm.
because you're going to give me money or you're going to spend your own time, and when everything's over, nobody's going to be happy. Like it's like, to go back to the grocery analogy of, like tomatoes, produce, everything in the supermarket. Because is emotional eating. You're just going to wind up fat. Like it's not going to do anything for you. Okay? So, all right. So, any other questions on reasons before we move on to the actual practical, here's what you can do part of our presentation?
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Marlon Marine, I didn't even look to see what time we wound up starting, since we had so much good news and stuff at the beginning. Is there a certain time that you need to make sure that I finish up by? So
Usually we end by 3:30 our time, which is 4:30 your time. So like in 45 minutes.
okay, all right, we're doing really well then. Okay, great. I just always spend so much time on the reasons, but they're just that important. Okay, so everybody ready to move on? Section.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Right, I do not have the Price is Right theme song for you. Don't worry.
Uh,
So, what I have found, if you go back to all these reasons, and even like the ones who want to help people, like the ones who want to help people, that winds up kind of going in under fame or name and lights, except fame to that community. Like, like you would want to market places where people who are at risk of alcoholism might be looking, or whatever. Okay. So, but what I have found is that while it is important to better understand the nuances of your reason, and if you are working with somebody to convey that to somebody else, or if you're just working with yourself to be aware of it while you Google advice and act and check to make sure your work is being done, or if you're partnering with your publisher's goal is going to be to sell copies. Your publisher's goal is always going to be sell copies. So to be aware if you ever have a different career or artistic goal than they do, and they say, I'm going to do this, this, and this for you. Well, how much of that maps what you need done? You know? So the reason why, whenever you look at all these reasons, what I have found is when you start mapping them to actions, the actions themselves kind of fall under three different paths, right?
Mhm.
So if you look, like it's sell more, it's be read, or it's fame. Like your people who are wanting to help change the world for others, that gets under fame because it's more just getting information in front of them. Doesn't matter if they buy a copy, doesn't matter if they read it. It's more about like the mission or whatever. You'll see there is a difference between like the type of fame for film and translation rights versus getting an agent. Like I would argue for those, like getting an agent's attention very early, if it is a deal with a traditional publisher, you want to get in Publishers Marketplace deal report. That's free. You or your publisher can send it in, and it helps them to see, wait, like if this author is selling a bunch of titles and they're making deals and they're not represented because you put your agent name on there. All right, that's something, that like an agent might see. But that's something when we go back to our goals, like does your target reader probably even know that the deal report exists? I'm going to guess not, unless your target reader is a publisher, bookstore, buyer, or agent, which mine's not, unless they enjoy, I don't know, reading about people on meth that shoot other people in the head. So Okay, here we are. Okay, they wind up mapping into basically three different avenues. And I also feel like I've been talking a lot. We're still doing okay?
We're good. Yeah, we're good.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to take a moment and give y'all a chance to look at these. And I don't know if our folks who are in person, if it's big enough for y'all to see what they are.
Can I
But
see?
before, go ahead.
I'm gonna make it, yeah, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger on our screen, but I
And
think
I'm going
we're,
to say there may be a way that I can slide this here and
I'm fine.
make it a little bit large. I don't know. I give up. Um, but I want, before we go on and start talking about what maps to what, I want to make sure that everybody knows what these things are. So everybody just kind of take a moment, read over it. If there's anything that somebody's like, what is that? We can chat about that real quick. And then I want to know if y'all agree with me, disagree with me, how we feel about mapping certain actions. Like I've had groups that got angry and made me retype them in different columns. Like the romance people, they're very opinionated about reviews. And
oh,
some of these are genre specific. Um, to where like awards evidently sell more copies in romance than they do in literary or whatever. But oh,
what is SEO under fame?
okay, that stands for search engine optimization. And that has to do with like if you go to Google and you type somebody in, search engine optimization is what makes you appear, if you do a good job with it, is what makes you appear on page 1 instead of page 2. Or it determines how high you rank. So you'd think that that would fall on the broader marketing, because like I can't tell you what to type on your website and that kind of thing. But what you can do, since all these things wind up being kind of the concentric, and connected circles of one another, what you can do is use your publicity and your public relations in a way to where, like, hang on, let me see if I can minimize this little control window. And this lady is one of my favorite clients. She's absolutely wonderful. Okay, so you see how over on the right hand side there's like a little Google card and it
Yeah.
automatically sort of knows who she is.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've got enough stuff on your name, it'll pull you up versus the other CJ Spataros or whatever. And this enables readers to find you more quickly. So doing more work toward this is going to better get you toward that fame goal. Like you'd be surprised how giddy some people get when they see that their pictures automatically pulled up on Google. I taught I taught at Kentucky Governor's School for the Arts this summer, and my students, they're going into 11th and 12th grade, and they were like, "You're Google famous," because like when you look me up, it's the same. And let me do it with my middle name. Like it's the same thing to where it's pulling it up, and that. Like if you have a name like Tarina, which my parents invented, and there are other Tarinas, they're all in the South and younger than me, so I think they stole my name. It's not as necessary then, but I have been informed by U.S. Patent and Trademark Office that names cannot be trademarked. That was a joke. But if your name is like Bob Smith, or like say, I don't know, like say your name is also S.J. Rosen, like you're gonna need some big search engine optimization work in order to pull up instead of like the S.J. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense that that goes under fame. Like, is me having a fancy little thing like this going to get anybody to read my book? I personally think probably not.
Mm.
All right. What else on here are we not familiar with or have questions with? It's okay. Nobody's going to judge you if you don't know what whatever is.
What's NetGalley?
Okay. NetGalley is one of the places where publishers give your book away for free prior to publication so they can pull it down and review it. There's another one called Edelweiss that libraries use. Let's look and see what crime is given away right now. Hold on. I don't want to just see my categories. Maybe there's not. I don't know if that's even going to pull it up. But basically, okay, well then let's stop trying to customize it and let's just pull up the first. Okay, so this Buzzard book right here. Okay. So the publisher Bindery Books has thrown it up and it has a couple different purposes. All right. One is that reviewers are able to get a copy of it beforehand and they're able to find out about it if they didn't know about it before. So you can say, hey, it's on NetGalley, and they can download it that way, and it solves like the file issue problem. Or you can use it for discoverability. So like say I come on and I go, oh, I didn't know that Ashley Winstead. Okay, so Ashley Winstead has written some thrillers, Source Books publisher. I didn't know Ashley had a new book coming out. I just saw that while I was looking to see what they're giving away. All right, it's from St. Martin's Press. I'm going to go on and request that. So that's one of the benefits is that getting in front of reviewers. Now, the folks who go on NetGalley tend to be more of like the bloggers who review. As opposed to like the Ron Charleses of the world, which I think Ron Charles is actually even retired. But another thing that you can do with that, so I'm going to hit request even though I don't really want it, but I'm not going to send it. Okay, so when you do this, you can see people when they go to download it. Do they want it because I'm familiar, like I met the author at a cocktail party, right? So I want it. Or because I think that cover's really cool. Or, the description, which is down here. And so the benefit of it is when you get those, or your publisher, whoever put it up there, gets those requests from people, you can almost kind of beta test it to where you can say, nobody hit description. Not a single person hit description. So do I really want to put this copy right here on the back of my book? Is that what's going to sell books when I'm giving them away for free and nobody wanted it? Right? Because of that. Okay. Like if nobody hits that the cover is part of what appeals to them, then that gives you time to redo your cover. And people will put these up here anywhere from, like a month to 6 months. I actually think Salman, oh no, he's not in this category. Okay. As I say, I think there's one for Salman Rushdie that they've put up like a year in advance. But anyway, I'm kind of getting a little off track there. But to get back to our slides, I've got NetGalley under being read because you're giving your book away for free. And so these blogger people are going to read it, like if they download it for free. So you're definitely getting readers with that. Now, are you going to get sales with it? Well, it depends. If I've got 3 followers on Instagram and I'm an influencer.com is who got it for NetGalley and read it for free, then you're probably not going to see a sale from that. So that's part of why I've got it under be read. Most of your big, huge, like New York Times level reviewers are not finding new books that way. Now, Maureen, you work for Westbrook Libraries, right? In addition to,
I work for the library.
do you do Robin? I can't remember her last name, but she does that early word galley chat. Do you do that like on social media where
I
librarians?
haven't. Should I? I don't know. I haven't done it,
Well,
but
it's kind of lost a little bit of steam since a lot of people got off Twitter, and she moved it at one point to Mastodon, and then I think it's on Blue Sky or somewhere now.
okay.
But the librarians who participate in it, they talk about, I downloaded it from NetGalley. Here's the link. I liked it. I didn't. And then she makes a spreadsheet at the end, and then publishers will go on there and push the NetGalley links.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's some other stuff. But I think that NetGalley is a little expensive. There's one called Book Sirens that people have been using instead because NetGalley is several $100s, and it's just to put it up there. But there's
Right.
one called Book Sirens that I like, and let's just
Okay.
do here so people have the information. Okay. But there's one called Book Sirens that I like a little better. Now, I don't think they've got librarians on it, but they do have, I think, more active bloggers. Because if you don't keep, as a blogger, if you don't keep your, because what happens is a lot of times on NetGalley, they download, like, I'll be honest, I download books on there for free because I used to
Yeah.
review 6 years ago. I haven't written a single review for 6 years, and they're still letting me get whatever I want for free on here, right? So
Right.
that's part of why I've got it under Be Read instead of Sell More. But NetGalley is one of those things that winds up on a checklist. Okay. So, Book Sirens, if you don't review something you downloaded from their site at least once every so many months, they chuck you off. If you don't review a certain percentage of the books that you download, they chuck you off. Before you agree, and it's $2 per download. So before you agree to let a blogger download that, you can look at their profile. You can see what percent are positive versus negative. There's another one called Hidden Gems, which operates very much in the same way. I think they're $3 or $4 a book, and Book Sirens has a $10 setup fee, and I think Hidden Gems has a $20. I know the Hidden Gems guys personally; they're really sweet and they know their stuff. They do relatively the same thing, but have a slightly smaller group of bloggers that they operate with, and cost slightly more. But I think if you look at the percentage, I think maybe a higher percentage of their folks do wind up reviewing. So, yeah.
Hmm. I'm glad to know. I know about NetGalley, but I didn't know about Book Sirens or
Yeah.
Hidden Gems.
And then
So
Book
that's nice.
Sirens also has a list. I've gone on there and not paid them a dime for titles and just mined their list of bloggers. So like you can go in and look at their cozy database and
Hmm.
contact all those people individually for free if you want.
On which one?
The Book Sirens, like they'll let you see the database of who they send stuff out to. NetGalley is one of those things that, like, I don't know, they're kind of like Walmart. Like, are they necessarily the best place to buy everything? No, but everybody's used to going there.
Yeah.
Like you might be able to get, I don't know, cheaper beef somewhere that hasn't accidentally been left in the toy section for an hour before they put it away. You buy it while you're at Walmart because they're Walmart. I actually had a college friend. It was his job to put away what he found in other departments. I'm never buying anything refrigeratable from them again.
Oh, God.
So which one were you saying that they will kick you off if you don't leave enough reviews?
Book Sirens.
Book
Yeah.
Sirens. Okay, you're making a good case for Book Sirens.
Mhm. Yeah, right. Mhm.
Book Sirens,
NetGalley's really expensive unless you do a co-op with somebody.
right.
And um,
Now,
yeah,
part of the co-ops, like if you join the Science Fiction Writers Association, which is hard because they're a little like MWA where you have to have qualifying publications. So, like if you publish somewhere like Saturday Evening Post, that'll qualify you for both organizations, but you really almost have to write so much sci-fi to join with them. But like if you're a member of them, you can get buy-in through their NetGalley or whatever. And then the other thing that happens with NetGalley is that you can kind of tell, like if I go on there as a reviewer, and I know we're getting into a little bit of a deep dive, but this is where I'm like, interrupt me, if we're ready to move on. But like I come down here and like I'm automatically approved like with Dutton. Okay. So I know Dutton's going to be largely nonfiction, it's going to be well written, pretty standard topics. These bookbuzz.net people, and see, this is the danger. Like some PR companies will have a thing where you can get on to NetGalley through their buy. I don't do one of those because I'm going to tell you right now, these BookBuzz people, like I've never, and I don't, like if this goes up on YouTube later and you are with BookBuzz, I apologize. This is just my personal experience. Do not sue me. But I have never downloaded anything from them that was not what we think of as the negative stereotype of self-published. Like the writing was mediocre as best. And so because of that, when I was a reviewer, it's been 6 years. And that's still why this is probably the third time that I've opened up to see what their titles are in 6 years. Because I just know that they're not going to be anything I want to review. And so it goes back to that. Well, somebody said I ought to be on NetGalley. Well, should you really? Like, was it worth $300 for these poor people to come on here and post their titles so that I could make a negative comment about them that's going to wind up on YouTube? Probably not.
Right.
You know, and if one of you are up here, I direly apologize.
Anything from the
Oh,
lawyer?
really?
Uh,
You're saying.
that's my book.
Okay, so let's come back to this so we can actually look at it. Sorry, gang. Okay, so anything else that because once we're done talking about what these things are and where they map, we can actually talk about how to measure whether they were successful in the way that you needed them to be. But we've still got time. I don't want to rush us. So is there anything else on here that somebody wants to know? Well, why do you say that goes there? Or why is that not there? Or what is that? Or how do I better do that?
I'm curious if you think book blogger interviews matter, if they affect anything. I mean, do people read blogs, and if so, do they then go read the book? Is that effective or just a thing you can do?
I think it depends on the blogger. Like Art Taylor has a really neat blog that he does for short story writers. And I have seen through the Short Mystery Fiction Society listserv where people do actually talk about stories that they have discovered through his blog. Now, if it is like my niece is 10, she's wanting to get a blog, that's not going to sell your story or mine. You know, so I think that you have to look and make sure that somebody good, but it's more the interview there than the book blogger that matters. And it could be an interview in, I don't know, does Texas Monthly still interview authors? I feel like I should know that. Is Texas Monthly even still around? No, I see you talking, but you're muted on the main. Sorry.
Yes, Texas Monthly's still around.
Okay. I knew they went through a couple of changes a few years ago, but like say it's interviewing Texas Monthly, like interviews to me lead to reads because if somebody is going to read that entire thing, they are a reader. When they get a copy of your book, be it through the library or through purchase or gift or whatever, they are going to sit down and inevitably read it. And I also would contend that anybody who's going to actually read the interview on the book blog, which that's the thing, never be ashamed to ask these people how many people read it. There are, and I'm not going to go log into any of them right now, but there are software tools that professionals have access to. Like one is called SEMrush, SEM, and it's not anything that y'all need to know, but just so you can see what I'm talking about. I've just typed it right there. Like SEMrush is one that can be used. Synthesio is another one that PR professionals can use, where they can go in and tell how many people read a blog. And then a lot of these book bloggers, where a book blogger can actually generate more to sales, is somebody, like if somebody actually sits and reads the interview, they're a reader. They're probably going to read your book if they get it, right? Some of these book bloggers, and some of these could actually wind up in more than one category, but some of these book bloggers can go into sales not because of the blog, like if nobody ever looks at it, but like there's a lady named Deborah Kalb, Kalb, and she's Deborah like spelled long, not DBRA, okay, like the with like the O in it. And the deal with her, it's not that anybody's going to read necessarily her blog. Some people do, some people don't. But she plasters the link to them all over social. And so what happens anytime that you want to sell, okay? So my first job out of college, I made commercials for our little local bandwidth TV station. It wasn't an ABC, it wasn't an NBC, it wasn't a CBS. They played free westerns during the day. Okay? But what I was taught at that time, like you think about who's had a commercial that they've seen 45 million times, and they're like, why is that still on the air? I'm so sick of seeing that thing. Okay. Yeah. And this was a lot more prevalent before like Netflix and everything.
Right.
At that time, so this was 1999, at that time, 70% of your audience had to have seen a commercial 7 times before they would purchase anything. Okay?
Hmm.
So let's fast forward to around 2005. Okay, so you've got the internet that has come into play then, right? Like we didn't have Netflix and everything, like it was still where they would mail you like a DVD at that point. But if we fast forward to 2005, right, everybody's still pretty much watching not the same 3 channels, but now ESPN and cable and all of that, but you're still getting magazines at home, but the internet has come on. All right, at that time, 80% of your audience had to have seen it 20 times before they.
Wow.
The last time that I checked this was probably around 2012, 2015 or so. That had gone up to they need to have seen it 40 times.
Oh my God.
All right. And it's because we have so many messages that we block and we screen them out. And so to go back to our grocery analogy, and you're like, I've seen some ads for that. I'm going to pick that up. For it to get into the noggin with all of the noise, people have to have seen it so many times. And when you've got, like on social media, you have a lot, like the crime community on social media is very small. The literary one is also very small. I'd say there's probably a 16% overlap, okay, of people who are active on these platforms. When they're seeing this lady post 3 or 4 times a day for 2 or 3 times across multiple platforms that she has done this blog on you, each one of those is an impression, okay? So that's how inevitably that blog stuff can lead to sales. And it's not somebody going to Amazon so much as they are actually physically in a store and they're like, I've seen that cover. Where have I seen that cover? Let me pick that up. Like I've seen this. Let me pick that up and let me look at the back of that. Well, that's interesting. So it winds up working in tandem with other things. And that's part of why for success, sales can be very hard to measure to single actions. Like, was that one thing I did worth it? You're not going to know. We're serving people vegetable soup, okay? Like, you're not going to know, like, if I didn't put the carrots in, like, am I still going to be able to serve them vegetable soup? Like, did the
Hmm.
onion really make that big of a difference? If it's a bad difference. If it's the only thing in the soup you can taste, right? But it's really hard when sales is the goal to pull because you've got to get through to them over and over and over again. And those actions that lead to, like I would argue that doing a signing at a library is something that leads to a sale. Now, sometimes the library will be really kind and just say, just sit up in the corner. But you know what I do? And Maureen, maybe you're going to hate me for this because I am Southern and it is guilt, which is what we do very well. But I always say, I'm so glad you had me come. Now, do you need a link to buy a title before I come sign? Because I would hate, libraries are so wonderful, and I would hate for somebody to come in and be interested in the book and not be able to afford one. And I want to make sure that it's there ready for them to check out.
I think that's fine. I think that here authors sell their books, when they come in, and that's
Right.
normal.
But
Can I?
so
Go ahead.
No,
There was a question in the chat. Do you want me to ask you now or wait?
Yeah, I'm not going to read the chat. Go for it.
Okay. So Nancy asks, is there a list of library contacts available either free or for a fee?
I'd say it varies by the state. I am originally from Kentucky, and Kentucky does require by law that each county, that the librarians, have so many years experience and have their Masters of Library and Information Science and that kind of thing. And so I was able, through our state government, to go in through public records and find a list of the head librarian for each county library in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, some states don't centralize it as much, like it's either Indiana or Illinois, I forget, where they actually your local county taxes don't pay the library, but like if you live in that county or that city, you have to pay a subscription. So my guess is they probably don't centralize by state. You could probably speak better as to, like if the Texas Library Association has things like that that are public. But I would caution you against a mass mailing of that nature because just because you are the head librarian does not mean that you are the acquiring librarian. So you might be spamming the wrong person. Where I have found the best way to get into libraries for people that your book is already published, okay? Because Maureen, you're the professional librarian, correct me if I'm wrong here. But most of the books y'all buy, I'm guessing it's before the books come out because you're anticipating that patrons will want it, correct?
A lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them.
So if your book has already come out, one way that I have found this is how I got my book into New York Public Library. And they wound up buying nearly 20 copies. And I was not on their radar because they get a lot of books that they read about in New York Times Book Review. Like they've got the big five because they're all right here in the city, sending them, advanced reader copy or ARC 1 to 2 years in advance. So me with my little Vermont publisher that they decided to publish this, in December, which is a horrible month, never publish a book in December, and made that decision in maybe like July to do that, I had no chance of getting through the normal ways. So what I did, friends and family will not always buy your book. All right, that is a reality I've had to deal with. People who have said their whole life, I'll do anything for you, will not spend $20.
Oh.
They'll do anything but purchase your book.
Tough truth.
Yeah. But what I have found they'll do is they'll recommend it to their local library, especially if you have a form letter and you look it up and you say, okay, if I know you live in Austin, here is a link to the Austin Library System patron request form. I know you live in Denver. Here is a link. And some of my friends even got library cards that way because they require it to log in depending on the site. Like the Clarksburg, West Virginia Library, which is where my brother lives, you have to ask at circulation. So when my brother brought my niece in, they asked at circulation for the library to purchase a copy. Most of them have an online website form, but that's how I got in the New York Public Library. And it was wonderful. Now, of course, New York Public Library, with our new mayor, that may change, but the last mayor cut them where they're not open on Sundays anymore, the money and that sort of thing. And so they pulled that temporarily down. But if you have multiple people who live in a city who are asking the library for a book, doesn't matter how old it is, if it is within their financial power, they'll go on and buy a copy of it. So that is one thing that I found that really drives sales. And like in New York, when they looked it up, my book is about being a Southerner living in New York going through the pandemic and how differently people reacted at home versus here in Manhattan and the cultural experiences around that. So when they see, okay, I've had 12 people ask for this in the last week, it does have X amount of reviews when they Google it, like it's not, some random, I don't know, thing. And they're like, oh, and that topic is actually interesting to us. They wind up buying more of them. So that's how libraries, we've got them under being read because a smaller library may only buy one, but we've got them under selling more because some of these systems, if you can get in through the normal channels to New York Public Library or the Seattle Public Library or, Dallas is going to buy more than one copy, right? They're purchasing for multiple branches. And then I've gone in, my boyfriend lives in a suburb that is north of New York City and has the ittiest bittiest little library. They don't even have magazines anymore. And there was, I forget who it was, but it was something let's just go back to Nicholas Sparks. Let's pretend that he had a new release. It was that Ellen Hillenbrand. Is she the woman that writes about Delaware beaches and said she wasn't writing anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was her. And there was a whole shelf of her book. And it was just that, I guess people that live there happened to love her. And they had just bought all of those. And then what happens is they stick them on library sale later. But they had so many people who read her over time that they bought a bunch of copies of it. So,
Yeah, I mean, at our library, if somebody requests a copy of something, we either buy it or we borrow it from another library, usually if we can. But we're not huge, so I know maybe New York Public Library has to have lots of people asking for it, but for us, usually if one person asks, we try to get it.
see, but that's how much libraries actually do to try to meet their patrons' needs. And so if you can do that, like your friends and family will do that, particularly if you give them the link and you just say, hey, this will really help me, it'll give other people access, that sort of thing. So libraries are also great because when we go to look for actual hard numbers or some sort of not tangible but objectionable metrics that we can use to determine whether the work that we were doing worked. And please forgive me for the use of worked and worked in the same sentence. I'm a much better writer than I am talker. Libraries are wonderful because if you want to know if you're being read, you can just go to the court card catalog and see. For like a year, I could just go to the NYPL, New York Public Library catalog, and look up. And every single time I looked for a year, it was checked out somewhere. And that made me feel really good. I'm like, I'm super down. I'm just going to the card catalog. I'm going to look and see if it's checked out. Now, when it wasn't checked out the first time, I had to emotionally deal with that. But is my book being read if that were my goal with that? Yeah, it's checked out, right? And now you don't always know, like when somebody checks it out, if they take it home, but if you see that it's been renewed, and that kind of thing, it's like, yeah, somebody's actually reading that. All right, Amazon reviews are another way to tell if it's been read because those reviewers actually have read part of it in order to leave a review unless they're a really weird internet troll, right? Okay, so, Maureen, do you want to tell us what WorldCat is, or should I? Or does somebody else know what WorldCat is? Or actually, I should have done what I did before and said, what on here do we not know what it is?
I think I can explain it, but you might also chime in. It's just if you want to look to see what libraries have a title, like if we don't have a title here that you want, we might look at WorldCat to see what libraries around the country have it.
Right. So the trick with WorldCat, what's somebody's favorite thriller or crime novel, real quick? I'm not going to pick on Noreen or put in my own book. Somebody name a book in our genre. Any book.
What was your first book? Marla, what was your first book?
Terror in Taffeta.
Terror in Taffeta.
Okay.
Nervous.
Here we go, Marlene. So you can, or Marla rather. So you can go in here. Oh, it's been translated into. No, I thought that was a Spanish translation for a minute. Okay. All right. So we can go in here and we can see now that this is the public viewable WorldCat. I do not have a subscription with them. So when Maureen logs in to see if another library has a book, she can see pretty much everybody that's in the system. But if you don't pay them so much a month, you only see the results from library. Yes, I am a human. You only see the results from libraries that have paid, okay, to let people see those results, okay? And also because I've got my zip code in here, we're going to see New York instead of Texas. Although if I can move my control window, we can change it to to a Texas zip code if y'all like. But New York Public Library has Marla's book, which is fantastic, right? Also doesn't.
I actually just found that out in December. We were there, and my friend was like,
Yeah,
"We should look if our books were there." And I said, "Our books aren't going to be here." And he goes, "Well, let's look." And I couldn't believe. I was like, I got reclaimed.
Yeah, of course.
So you're in the Brooklyn Library, you're in the Queens Library, which I can tell you is super hard to get into. Queens will ignore a patron request in a heartbeat. Princeton University, we're doing pretty good here, right? So this tells us, when we go back to if we're doing library marketing in particularly, and we want to know, did it sell? Okay. This gives us, I would say, I don't know, and Maureen, you're in the industry, but I would say that this probably gives us, if you look at the amount of libraries that pay and so are listed versus the ones that don't pay, so they're not listed, I'd say we're looking at maybe a third.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it looks pretty good. Yeah.
That's just kind of been my guess, right? I don't even know Minuteman Library. That sounds very revolutionary. I like it. But this gives us some idea. So if you're working and you're doing this big library marketing campaign and you're promoting your book to that early word galley chat group we were talking about earlier, and you're having your friends ask and that kind of thing, instead of going to every card catalog around the world to see if they have it, this is a way, like, if we saw this 488 libraries total, like if we saw that move to 588, something is working, right? Even if you only had one book in here before, now you have 13. That doesn't mean that only 12 more bought it, because again, some of those libraries might not have paid to be in there. All right. And I realize we're throwing a lot of information at once, but it is a way, if the success was to sell more copies. Now, this is where, like, people who are with hybrid, this is where we get into trouble, because they're like, well, I've got to sell X amount for them to traditionally publish my next one. I can't tell you X amount. The only way for sure that you're ever going to know, like if you sold a number, like sell more, we can determine through that. Like BookScan, if you go in through your Amazon author account, it'll show you like how many on Amazon, and then big stores, sold. You can access that for free. But the only way for sure that you're going to know your exact number are your royalties reports if your publisher is organized and honest. And I say that because those are two different things, and not all publishers are both. So,
Kind of laughing at the last one under fame, because I was like writing them all down and I was like, paparazzi. There you go. Yeah, I think if paparazzi starts chasing us, we'll know we've arrived.
Yeah.
something.
Don't see it happening, but
Something. I would turn around to make sure George Clooney wasn't accidentally behind me.
that would be.
Did y'all see the video of that poor man who accidentally like walked in front of Prince William and his wife, and then the security guys all went, and he had like a food delivery bag, and he's like, he didn't realize he'd walked like right past them. Yeah, that would be me with paparazzi. Like, oh my gosh, why are these people taking pictures of me? Oh, there's Prince William. Okay, that would be it.
Well, this is so much good information.
Yeah. What do we think? What other, I know I've got a lot up here, but it's because everybody's goals are different. So the actions that you want to know or need to know about are going to be different. And then the way that we measure those is going to be different. So I know that we didn't cover everything that is in here, but were there any other burning, applicable to the produce section questions?
I have a question, Tarina.
Yes, sir.
When you get a new client with a book that they're trying to promote, how much time do you spend trying to get a feel for the material that they're trying to promote?
Good question.
It
whether
depends.
you think the book is worth trying to promote, or
Yeah, it depends. And by worth trying to promote, one of those is a subject where I think they're just not going to be wasting their money. And by that I mean, like, I don't know, like if you had a book that like was openly promoting racism or whatever, I would have to turn it down, not just like on a moral level, but also on a nobody is going to review that constructively for you level. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then the other is written well enough that we're not embarrassing anybody. And that, like, I can usually tell, like with fiction, I can usually tell if somebody's got voice or tone pretty quickly, just like a reader can. Like if you think about when you go into Barnes and Noble, the number of pages that you may read before you decide to buy it, like I don't read the whole thing. And I've had people walk away and their goal, I can guarantee you, was in the read it column. But some books I do read the whole thing because I'm enjoying them. But it comes down to that, yes, I know I can sell this. Yes, I know that I'm going to be proud to represent this. And I don't know. I grew up in a lower socioeconomic household. And so I'm not per hour, I'm on a monthly stipend, but there is some sort of understanding of how many hours roughly I'm going to put in. And so at a certain point, something kicks in where it's like, okay, I'm going to finish reading this in my own time, but I want them to start seeing return on their value now. And so if I
Mhm.
sit here and I spend the whole month, like if I billed you for an entire month and all I did was read your book, that's a pretty shoddy return to you. Does that make sense?
Yep. I have a second question, which is, do you have clients or consider clients whose goals might be geographically specific? So they're sell more books and read more or be read, but they think Texas readers are going to be a lot more interested in their material than, say, the whole country, for example.
Yes. And that should be the case with every book. And maybe not necessarily Texas, but like there is those of you who write cozies, did you know there is a cat writers association? So like if you're writing, I don't know, like we were kind of laughing because I had my Lonesome Dove thing pulled up. Like Lonesome Dove is not a target book for the cat writers people. Okay? But if I'm writing about, if I'm like how John Land has his Angela Lansbury series and she has a pet cat in the newest Murder She Wrote book, that's probably not going to appeal, like something that's highly, highly New England is probably not going to appeal as well to people in Austin. So that to me is the way that every writer should be thinking. But I would counter back to you and say that, and even something that is highly, highly, highly pinpoint, maybe like on say Texas history or something, like say you're writing about the Alamo or whatever. I would argue that you probably have more universal appeal than you think. But like if your goal is sales, I say always, always, always start with the local market. Like I've got a poetry collection, Tributaries, that came out from Sagging Meniscus, which is a small press in New Jersey. The poet is in Michigan, and we started point blank with Michigan level press. But what happens is press is like a snowball, and the more you can get it down the hill, the bigger it gets. And so like we've got him on like a local like if you get him in like the local alt weekly paper, and then you get him on a local cable network show, and then next thing you know, the statewide, like there's an NPR show for Michigan called Stateside, that they do it statewide in Michigan, but then they also do it also broadcast in the surrounding counties. And so next thing you know, stateside wants to talk to him. And then all of a sudden these other things are picking up. And so local is where you're going to see the most sales because there is local interest. Bookstores dedicate entire sections, often independent bookstores will, to local interest. So you want to start there, but I would caution you, it's kind of a balance. You have to know who your target market is, and that can't be too wide because if you try to please everybody, you'll please nobody. But I would look at local as a starting place, like where you throw the rock in the pond, and then I would allow that to ripple bigger as your personal time and or money bandwidth allows. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Does that
great.
answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Nancy has one quick question. What's the Google Knowledge Panel?
Yeah, that's the thing. Hang on. Y'all can't see my little Zoom control window, but whenever I stare at the computer with a little mouse face, it's because I'm trying to figure out how to move it. Okay, so a Google Knowledge Panel is all of this extra stuff that pulls up. Actually, the Google Knowledge Panel is just this part that says Overview. Where it's saying who you are. So, and that's Google. Like, so the Google Knowledge Panel for CJ, part of that's because, like, she uses initials, and so her name isn't as unique as Tarina. But her Google Knowledge Panel is just what she looks like in the title of her book. But really, for sales as a goal, that's all she needs. But the Google Knowledge Panel for her book is a lot bigger. Like there's a lot more information up here, which her goal was not fame. Her goal was copies and then some personal type validation things. And so that's what we don't care if her name is known. We care if the book's name is known. Does that answer that?
I think so.
Okay. I'm looking to
My
see.
Google Knowledge panel shows Marla Wynne Cooper, who is DB Cooper's niece, who's written a book about it. And that's
That's,
always been a thing.
oh no.
They had her on for a while, like if you clicked on Amazon to my page, it would have my books and her book, like we were all the same person. And I was like, I'm not her.
Oh,
Anyway,
no.
sounds like got some work to do on that,
Hmm.
Tarina.
And also, and this goes back to the gentleman. I apologize, sir, I didn't catch your name.
Pat,
Okay,
Pat.
you said I didn't hear.
like Patrick.
Okay. So this goes back to Pat's question on the local. Those Google panels also used to, they didn't, but those Google panels also change a little bit based off of where you are.
Hmm.
So because they're like, if I were to Google UK, it's probably going to pull up University of Kentucky. Like in an hour back home, it would pull up University of Kentucky as opposed to United Kingdom.
Hmm.
Because like it's kind of using a little bit of, I won't say intelligence, but like they're trying to predict a little what you want, because then you'll come back to Google if the results are more applicable to you. So I can run them right now, or I would encourage you to get somebody who doesn't live in Texas to look it up and see if there's as much confusion. But,
Hmm.
but they can be slightly nuanced depending on where you live.
Do we have any other questions?
What's your favorite tactic for getting people out there?
Oh gosh. I love libraries. I absolutely love libraries. So anything that can be done to get somebody's book in a library, I just absolutely adore. And especially when you're helping people to sort and get their friends and family to ask, because it gets them to realize, yes, even though my third cousin did not purchase my book, they do still love and support me, and they won't do anything for me, but they will do things that don't require $20. That makes
Yeah.
me feel a whole lot better. And then I love working with the press. I genuinely and truly, and not so much like an article that's just on you, but like the Today Show thing, they were talking about why people enjoy horror. And so they were talking to horror experts. And so getting that author positioned as a horror expert, that sort of thing to me, I really appreciate when you can get the broader news media to pay attention to anything that we actually do, even if the author was upset about it because he didn't see any sales, because it's a really obscure distribution process.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tarina.
Thank you for having me. And please do, my email and everything's on the screen. I had stuck it in the chat for our folks from home a little bit earlier. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions. Yes, I do this for a living, and eventually, if you keep asking question after question, I would want someone to pay me. However, I'm not here as a PR person today. I'm here as a teacher. And there are always personality types, and then that they have a hard time asking in public. And then also, like the French have an expression that is translated to spirit of the stairwell. And it means that you always think about what you wanted to ask when you're in the stairwell after having left
Okay.
on your way out. So if anybody gets in your car and you have spirit of the Ford, please, or please do give me an email, and I'm happy to clarify, any quick hit questions anybody's got. So,
Great.
Well, thank you so much.
all right.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for coming today. And we'll see you next time. We're still confirming our speaker for next month, but as soon as we know, we'll do an announcement. So yeah, okay. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat now.
I'm gonna go ahead and bye bye, Tarina.
Bye.